My fiancée Sarah convinced me to hire her friend, Marcus, as our wedding photographer for half price, claiming he was doing us a favor. What I didn't know was that she'd been having an affair with him for months, and they planned to use our wedding as their twisted finale before running away together with my money. But when I discovered their scheme 3 days before the ceremony, I decided to let them have their perfect moment, right in front of 200 guests who would witness the most unforgettable wedding photos ever taken. Hey viewers, welcome to the channel. We are just starting and your support means a lot if you enjoy these stories. Please consider subscribing and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. I, George, 29, should have known something was wrong when my fiancée, Sarah, 26, suddenly became obsessed with our wedding photographer being perfect. For months, she'd been dismissive about wedding planning, rolling her eyes when I suggested venues or caterers, acting like the whole thing was a chore she had to endure. Then, out of nowhere, she started raving about this photographer named Marcus who could do our wedding for half the price of anyone else we'd looked at. He's a friend from college, she explained, showing me his portfolio on her phone. He's just starting out, so he's giving us a huge discount. Isn't that amazing? I'll admit, his work looked professional enough, and saving $3,000 on photography meant we could afford the honeymoon in Italy that Sarah had been dreaming about. So I agreed, thinking I was being a good fiancé by supporting her choice. What I didn't realize was that Marcus wasn't just a friend from college. He was the guy she'd been sleeping with for the past 4 months. I found out completely by accident. 3 days before our wedding, I was at Sarah's apartment helping her pack for our honeymoon when her phone buzzed on the counter. The message preview lit up the screen. Marcus, can't wait to see you in that dress before I help you out of it. Then we'll be free. My heart stopped. I stared at the phone, hoping I'd misread it, but there it was in black and white. I unlocked her phone. I knew her passcode. We'd never hidden anything from each other, or so I thought, and what I found made me physically sick. Months of messages, photos I won't describe, plans not just for an affair, but for something much worse. They weren't just sleeping together, they were planning to run away together. The day after our wedding, Marcus was supposed to drive Sarah to the airport where she'd fly to meet him in Mexico. With my money. The joint account we'd set up for wedding expenses and our new life together had been cleaned out gradually over the past month, transferred to an account only she could access. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was reading their messages about me, how stupid I was, how easy it was to manipulate me, how Marcus would be taking photos of her marrying someone she called a pathetic loser before they disappeared together. They thought it was hilarious. They were planning to have sex in the bridal suite before the reception, with me downstairs greeting guests. I sat there in her apartment, staring at the evidence of my complete humiliation, and something inside me broke. Not just my heart, but something deeper. The version of myself that trusted people, that saw the best in everyone, that believed love was enough to build a life on. I could have confronted her. I could have called off the wedding, exposed them both, and walked away. But as I sat there reading their cruel messages about me, I realized I wanted something more than just to end it. I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to experience the humiliation they'd put me through, so I kept quiet. I acted normal. I pretended I was the same excited groom-to-be I'd been that morning. The next 2 days were the hardest of my life. Sarah was practically glowing with excitement, and I realized it wasn't about marrying me at all. She was excited about her escape plan. She'd hug me and tell me how much she loved me, and I'd hug her back knowing she was going to betray me in front of everyone I cared about. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early and drove to Marcus's studio. I'd done some research and found out he lived in the apartment above his workspace. I knocked on the door, and when he answered, I could see the surprise and guilt flash across his face. "Hey man," he said, trying to sound casual, "what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be getting ready?" "I wanted to thank you," I said, handing him an envelope. "Sarah told me how much you're doing for us, and I wanted to give you something extra." He opened the envelope and found a check for an additional $500, along with a note that said, "For capturing every moment perfectly." "Wow, thanks," he said, and I could see him trying to figure out if I knew something. "I promise I'll get some amazing shots today." "I'm counting on it," I said, and left. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd also slipped a second note into the envelope, one that would fall out when he opened it later. It contained a simple message: I know about the affair, I know about the money, I know about Mexico. Today, you're going to earn that extra $500. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful. Sarah looked stunning in her dress, and if I hadn't known what I knew, I would have been the happiest man alive. Marcus was there with his cameras, taking pictures, playing his part perfectly. Our families were there, our friends, everyone who mattered to us. During the vows, Sarah looked into my eyes and promised to love me forever, to be faithful, to build a life together. I said my vows too, but I changed them slightly from what we'd practiced. Instead of promising to love her forever, I promised to give her exactly what she deserved. After the ceremony, as we were taking family photos, I saw Marcus checking his phone. I watched his face go pale as he read my note. He looked around frantically, caught my eye, and I just smiled and nodded toward his camera. The reception was in full swing when I asked the DJ for the microphone. I told everyone I wanted to make a special toast to my new wife. The room fell quiet, and I could see Sarah beaming at me from the head table. 6 months ago, I began, I thought I knew what love was. I thought it was about trust, about honesty, about building something beautiful together with someone who shared your dreams. People were smiling, thinking this was going to be a sweet speech about how much I loved Sarah. But today, I learned that love is actually about truth. About seeing people for who they really are, not who you want them to be. I could see Sarah's smile starting to fade. She looked confused. So I want to share some truth with all of you. Marcus, could you please put up the slideshow you prepared for us? Marcus looked like he was going to be sick, but he had no choice. He connected his laptop to the projector screen we'd set up for wedding photos. This is a special presentation, I continued, about the real story of how this wedding came to be. The first image that appeared on the screen was a screenshot of Sarah's text messages with Marcus. Not the explicit ones, but the ones where they talked about how stupid I was, how easy it was to steal my money, how they were going to run away together. The room erupted. People were gasping, some were shouting. I could hear Sarah's mother crying. Sarah herself was frozen in shock, staring at the screen as her betrayal played out in front of everyone she knew. Marcus here isn't just our photographer, I continued calmly. He's been documenting a different kind of love story. The story of how my wife and her lover planned to steal my money and disappear together tomorrow. More screenshots appeared, bank records showing the money transfers, screenshots of flight bookings, messages about their plans to consummate their relationship in the bridal suite. The beautiful thing about having a photographer, I said, looking directly at Sarah, is that every moment gets captured. Every truth gets preserved. Sarah finally found her voice. Stop this, she screamed. Turn it off. But Marcus was paralyzed. The slideshow kept going, showing more evidence of their deception. The room was in chaos now, with people standing up, shouting, my mother-in-law being supported by my father-in-law as she sobbed. The best part, I said, raising my voice over the noise, is that I've already contacted the police about the theft. Sarah, you might want to check your phone. I think you have some missed calls. That's when she tried to run. But my groomsmen, who I'd filled in on the plan that morning, were ready. They didn't stop her exactly, but they made sure she couldn't leave the building before the police arrived. Marcus tried to pack up his equipment and leave, but someone had already called the police, and they were waiting outside. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life became the most satisfying day of my life instead. Sarah was arrested for theft. Marcus was arrested as an accessory. The money was recovered from the account she'd hidden it in. But the real satisfaction came from watching everyone she'd planned to humiliate me in front of witness her true character instead. Her family, her friends, her coworkers, they all saw who she really was. They saw the messages where she called me pathetic, where she laughed about deceiving me, where she planned to destroy my life for her own amusement. The annulment was processed quickly, given the circumstances. Sarah tried to reach out to me from jail, claiming she was sorry, that she'd made a mistake, that she really did love me, but I'd learned the difference between love and manipulation. 6 months later, I got a message from Marcus. He'd been released and was trying to rebuild his photography business. He apologized and offered to do a photo shoot for me for free as a way to make amends. I declined. I told him I already had all the photos I needed from that day, the ones that showed the exact moment when two people who thought they were so clever realized they'd been outsmarted by the pathetic loser they'd underestimated. The truth is, I'm grateful it happened. Not for the pain, not for the betrayal, but for the clarity. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, smarter than they assumed, and worthy of real love, not the counterfeit version Sarah was offering. I'm dating someone new now, someone who knew the whole story before we even went on our first date. She says she admires how I handled it, how I turned my pain into power instead of just accepting the role of victim they'd written for me. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled it, if I wish I'd just walked away quietly. But I always tell them the same thing: some people only learn through consequences, and some betrayals are so calculated, so cruel, that they deserve to be exposed in exactly the way they were planned. Sarah and Marcus thought they were the ones controlling the narrative of my life, but in the end, I was the one behind the camera, and I made sure everyone saw the real picture.